There was a time when the mention of the Fifth Ward, a neighborhood about 2 miles northeast of downtown Houston, Texas, didn't conjure images of drugs, crime, and poverty. When it was officially established in 1866, a year after the American Civil War ended, the area had an increasing number of blacks living on the promise of life after slavery. By the 1880s, the Fifth Ward was almost exclusively black, and in the face of Jim Crow, inadequate municipal services, and two devastating fires, thrived with large pockets of prosperity. But the Fifth Ward began to significantly change in the 1940s and 50s as the population and housing density increased. Many black migrants, most of which came from Louisiana or other parts of Texas, couldn't get jobs in the skilled trades, thereby increasing the neighborhood's level of unemployment. The construction of Interstate 10 through Texas in 1959 fragmented the Fifth Ward, consequently disrupting the self-sufficiency of the black population. And that self-sufficiency was further eroded by the desegregation of the 1960s as prosperous black families moved out into the suburbs, taking their businesses and expertise along with them. What was left was a hollow shell of what the Fifth Ward once was. James Prince, government name James Johnson, and later going by James Andre Smith, but best known as J. Prince, was born on Halloween night, only 3 months after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the landmark legislation that truly set desegregation in motion, was passed. By his teen years, he had few prospects in the midst of the Fifth Ward's blight. Born to teenage parents, James, an older sister, and a half-brother grew up in Clem Manor, an apartment complex off the coincidentally named Coke Street, mired in so much violence and drug dealing that it was nicknamed Bloody Nickel. James had seen and experienced so much turbulence and tragedy before he entered his teens. He had attended a lot of funerals, one of which was that of his very own sister after being sawed in half by a train on the way home from school. Poverty was a bastard, and James was determined to escape from it. Initially, the path would have been as an athlete, with inspiration coming from O.J. Simpson. But James was nowhere as talented as the Juice. Plus, the 9-to-5 thing wasn't working. At the age of 20, James got laid off as a bank teller only a few years after graduating high school. So James, morphing into J. Prince, strung vocations together. He mowed lawns. He gambled. He sold stolen cannabis plants. He worked on a welding truck. He set up a car dealership from the remnants of an abandoned building and grew it into a luxury car sales business with a professional athlete-oriented clientele. Suspicious of his seemingly quick rise, some people began to claim that J. Prince was involved in, street pharmaceutical distribution, with the car dealership as his front. It's a dark cloud that hovers over J. Prince, even though he was never charged nor indicted on illegal drug activity and money laundering in his heyday. Regardless of the source of J. Prince's fortune, the enterprising young man was eventually able to purchase a house and a 30-acre ranch. He was only 23 then. By now, J. Prince's interests were expanding into music. Credit that to his surviving sibling and half-brother, Thelton Polk, who aspired to be an MC in an emerging genre named hip-hop. J. Prince might have wanted to escape the poverty of the Fifth Ward, but he never wanted to escape the Fifth Ward itself. A community-oriented businessman, he believed that his allegiance and assistance to his neighborhood, and by extension his fellow black Americans, was as vital as his tremendous drive and success. And if hip-hop was going to be yet another outlet for his self-styled populist philanthropy, why not? Thelton Polk was going to be one of the pieces to comprise James's first rap act. It also helped that he had an interesting moniker, Sir Rap-A-Lot.
Dave Thomas could make the perfect 99-cent cheeseburger for Texans. He had to take in your vistas, walk in your boots, to see just how big everything was. Then Wendy's created the big 99-cent quarter-pound Texas double cheeseburger made with...
They say everything's bigger in Texas. Even as hip-hop emerged from New York and established its core foundation in the northeastern United States, cities like Houston had nightclubs such as the Rhinestone Wrangler that could accommodate clientele that dwarfed the numbers at the Big Apple. One of the regular performers at the Wrangler was Keith Rogers, going by the nickname Sire Jukebox. Although he had his crew, the Awesome Three, it would be his acquaintance with a transplant from Trenton, New Jersey, Oscar series, nicknamed Raheem, that would yield a more fruitful professional outcome. When the other two members of the Awesome Three dropped off, Jukebox and Raheem formed a rapping duo weathered from the rap contest battlefields of the Wrangler, hungry for their big break. Word of their skill and growing popularity got to Jay Prince, who already had his brother, who now more frequently used the rap name K9, by his corner and wanted him to do something more constructive with his life. In 1986, in the living room of an associate of Jay Prince named N.C. Trahan, Jay Prince made both Jukebox and Raheem promise to stay in school and graduate in order to get any form of financial backing from him. K9 would join them as the third member, and they all had to come up with a name for the trio, and a name for the record label that would accommodate them. When K9 jokingly suggested they call their group Geto Boys, inspired by he and his brother's rough beginnings in the Bloody Nickel, Jay Prince initially balked. They were already the Fat Boys and the Beastie Boys and even the Skinny Boys, but the more it rang in his head, the more he liked it. The same scenario occurred with naming the record company. K9 suggested they use his other moniker, Rap-A-Lot, and Jay Prince accepted it. Rap-A-Lot would be the name of the label, and the Geto Boys would be the name of its inaugural act. However, the issue became whether the group lineup was going to hold. Raheem really saw himself as more of a solo act. Car Freak, which involves women lured to men with flashy cars and borrows liberally from Houdini style, served as the group's first single in 1987. But the muted response beyond Houston was enough for Raheem to dip and get his own deal with Rap-A-Lot. As for K9, the passion and discipline to be a recording professional was not there, and his immersion in the streets ended up landing him in jail anyway. So, a group of three was down to a group of one. Reinforcements were necessary. The pair of producers for Car Freak hadn't worked out. The Geto Boys needed an in-house producer and DJ to shape their sound and man the turntables. And yeah, there was a need for another MC. Like Raheem, Collins Adam Laysath, going by the nickname Grand Wizard DJ Ready Red, hailed from Trenton, New Jersey, and he was in a crew called Def 4. When Jukebox saw him perform at a DJ competition at the Rhinestone Wrangler, he was sold. And Ready Red introduced an MC and fellow Trenton native Jonathan Prince Johnny C. Carmichael to Jukebox via a demo. Johnny C. in particular must have been very thankful. He had a second kid on the way. A second single dropped in 1987, You Ain't Nothin', borrowing a vocal hook and a guitar riff from Elvis Presley's Hound Dog and its B-side, Don't Be Cruel, respectively. The Geto Boys were obviously riding on a rockabilly template from the Fat Boys, who are broken out with a cover of the 1963 surf rock classic Wipeout. Their version had made it as far as number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was propelling their latest album, Crushin', toward platinum status. Consequently, the Fat Boys embarked upon a national tour between September and November 1987 to further push the hit single and new album, and Jay Prince was able to pull enough strings to enable the Geto Boys to hop on board. The newcomers now got to be alongside, in addition to the Fat Boys themselves, other family-friendly acts such as Heavy D and the Boys and Salt and Pepper. But the Geto Boys' second single would not be another Wipeout. And then an odd thing occurred. Ready Red's attention was drawn by a fellow DJ to the breakdancing skills of a Jamaica-born dwarf with a government name Richard William Stephen Shaw, but went by the stage name Little Billy. The sub-4-footer joined the Geto Boys as the fourth member, instrumental in electrifying the crowd with his comic relief and dancing antics before the MCs would take to the stage. A third single subsequently dropped. Be Down is a more traditional hip-hop 12-inch with inner-city storytelling, Ready Red as producer, and War Slipping Into Darkness as its main sample. Unfortunately for the boys, its name became literally befitting. That was 3 bricks out of 3 singles. Undeterred though, Rap-A-Lot determined that there was enough local buzz to issue the group's debut album, Making Trouble.
We're making trouble.
Now, this was 1988. The East Coast, or the Northeast, had its well-developed hip-hop scene, particularly in New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. The West Coast was not too far behind, with its most prominent centers in Los Angeles and the Bay Area. The Gulf Coast, sometimes referred to as the colloquial Third Coast, was the comparatively underdeveloped South, which included Houston. A cursory look or spin of the Geto Boys Making Trouble is everlasting evidence of such a state of affairs in the late 80s. There's the gold dookie chains, the black fedora hats and outfits, the rock-tinged beats, and the tag team rhyming style. For ardent hip-hop fans, this could only mean one group, right?
That's right. On time. It's tricky. It's the tight. Here we go.
Yeah, it's Run DMC of the South. Jukebox is Run, Johnny C is DMC, Ready Red is Jam Master Jay, and Little Billy is, well, never mind. Basically, Making Trouble, released on February 17, 1988, is a Southern Run DMC album. The front album insert has the group decked in full Kings of Rock regalia, sans the laceless Adidas shoes. Musically, the title track, which funny enough opens the album, is by far the biggest offender, utterly sounding like it would be at home in any of the first 3 Run DMC records. And throughout the album, it's truly mind-boggling to hear just how Jukebox and Johnny C sound so much like their lionized Eastern counterparts, right down to their voices and cadences. Ironically, the title track is quite possibly the best cut on the album. The roaring guitars, the slamming beat, and the rhyming chemistry sounds like a ripoff, but this is a pretty darn good one. The emulation is so shamelessly blatant that the MCs yell in one-time freestyle. In a sense, Jukebox and Johnny C were in a tight spot. The southern rap scene was comparatively nascent at this point, and there was no other way to look but the East, where it all began. Plus, Jay Prince, who served as the executive producer, with Rap-A-Lot co-founder Cliff Blodgett as the engineer and contributing producer, ruled with an iron hand. These teenagers were going to follow his instructions to the letter, and that included making an album that could sell lots of copies. Read commercial. That explains not only the stylistic borrowing from Run DMC and, to a lesser extent, the Fat Boys, 2 of the most successful hip-hop acts at the time, but also the real-life experiences of the ghetto toned down in translation. For instance, a song like Assassins is supposed to be bursting with unbridled murderous rage across the Fifth Ward. It's actually one of the album's strongest songs. But the delivery occasionally sounds as though the MCs are masking their doubt in what they were rapping about. In fact, the only real touch of menace is the Scarface sample that serves as part of the hook.
Geto Boys, Geto Boys, Geto Boys, Geto Boys. Don't f with me.
And speaking of Scarface,
Say hello to my little friend.
a remake of a 1930s gangster film, Brian De Palma's 1983 version is the story of Tony Montana, played by acting legend Al Pacino, and who rose from his lowly station as a Cuban refugee to a powerful drug lord in Miami. It's a nearly 3-hour epic of ample violence, wanton betrayal, exaggerated accents, vulgarity galore, and the most fascinating fall, literally and figuratively, of all time. Not surprisingly, the initial critique of Scarface was largely savage. De Palma was even nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award as the Worst Director of the Year. But Scarface did well at the box office, and it gained a second life in reruns and on home video. Hip-hop became the main driving force behind ensuring the cultural dominance of Scarface, and it all started with DJ Ready Red. He had a tape of Scarface playing in front of him as he was working with his TR-808. The album was halfway done, but Ready Red, to paraphrase him, needed something to wake it up. The movie got to the scene where Tony Montana is in Bolivia, apparently on a mission to broker a deal on behalf of his boss, Miami drug lord Frank Lopez, with cocaine kingpin Alejandro Sosa. Tony is accompanied by Omar Suarez, Frank's longtime henchman, who, by this point, serves as his right-hand man. Omar, who never liked Tony, well, the feelings were mutual, is furious that the former is negotiating on terms that neither he nor Frank would approve. Sosa suggests that Omar leave, arranging for him to depart in a helicopter with his men, while Tony stays to iron things out. Tony watches as Omar is tortured and then hanged from the helicopter. Sosa tells Tony that Omar was killed because he was a police informant, and if Tony couldn't sense it, how could he trust his judgment? And should he trust him? And that's when Tony utters the words that caught Ready Red's attention.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one. Do you understand?
Ready Red rewound the tape and sampled that section of Scarface using the Sequential Circuit Studio 440 machine. Balls and My Word is dedicated to the DJ splicing one-liners and sound effects around the titular snippet, which is layered on a cruising 808 beat. Couple that with the aforementioned Assassins and other tracks such as Snitches, which expresses the group's dislike for all types of informants, Omar anyone, and beautifully segues into Balls on My Word, and you have the origins of hip-hop's obsession with and amplification of Scarface. For decades afterwards, rappers would draw inspiration from the fascinating and relatable rise from nothing to everything. There's another precedent that Making Trouble set. The masterfully produced Snitches, complete with a simple, catchy hook, kicked off the status of Bob James's Nautilus as one of hip-hop's favorite sampling sources. Still though, you would think that Sire Jukebox and Prince Johnny C would jump off Run DMC's jockstraps for once and grow a pair. The few times they actually tried to, though, revealed that they either had some more artistic growth to undergo or felt handicapped by their overlord's requirements. Geto Boys Will Rock You is an embarrassingly bad semi-remake of Queen's iconic We Will Rock You. The synth-bass driven Why Do We Live This Way is nothing more than a routine, threadbare track about societal ills. And No Curfew is exemplary of the fact that the 80s was replete with rap novelty tracks just like any other decade of its existence. As for the backing tracks laden with overdriven guitars, well, even Run DMC discovered that such a production technique was incredibly passé in the rap world by '88. At least Ready Red, with assistance from Blodgett and fellow producer Carl Stevenson, was establishing the earliest sonic and thematic template for the group's future classic lineup, with the 808 hardened tracks such as Balls My Word, Assassins, Snitches, and I Run This. It all comes to an end with The Problem, an outro of sorts, where Little Billy, amidst his groupmates celebrating the completion of the album, finally manages to get a few words in before they get out of Dodge.
What is the other problem?
Come on, man, what's
I'm
the
too
problem,
short for a
man?
long conversation.
Yeah, Billy will get better with the wisecracks about his physical shortcomings. When Making Trouble came out, it barely even made a ripple, let alone a splash. And Jay Prince must have gotten the message. Off he went to California to attend a mysterious meeting on hip-hop and the music industry. The details have never been made clear, but the outcome was certain. When Jay Prince came back, he wanted the Geto Boys to reflect their name in the most nihilistic way, Gangsta. His Southern Californian counterpart, Eazy-E, co-founder of Ruthless Records, was already getting started, having released the popular Boys in the Hood and getting ready to unleash his group, NWA. Apparently, one of the attendees of this mysterious meeting was Michael Harry O. Harris, a notorious Los Angeles cocaine kingpin who, informants had claimed, supplied Jay Prince about $200,000 in seed money to get Rap-A-Lot going. After all, Harry O. liked the Geto Boys. He was the one who hooked them up for the Wipeouts tour. But Jay Prince worried that perhaps Harry O. liked the group a little too much. Fearing that the Geto Boys might be poached by the drug overlord, he hurried back to Houston, where the group was putting the finishing touches to their sophomore album, Just Made a Jump in the Hype, primed for a 1989 release. As convoluted as the title was, the Geto Boys nevertheless believed that this was their best work yet. But with his new direction, Jay Prince canned the album, and that decision sent shockwaves through the group, rattling its lineup. Johnny C had had enough. He had to deal with a flop debut, a nixed sophomore album, and solo aspirations. So he left, but not Rap-A-Lot. Little Billy was reportedly too wild to handle, so he got kicked out. And when Jukebox had his ego bruised upon Jay Prince suggesting that his latest signee, an ex-amateur boxer by the name of William Dennis, aka Willie D, write lyrics for him, he headed for the door. It was a decision he would later regret. The following year, Jukebox was convicted of murder and spent the next 14 years in jail. Ready Red must have felt pretty lonely. Over time, fans have forgotten or willfully ignored Making Trouble as an official Geto Boys album, and deservedly so. Granted, it's not a bad album, it's finely sequenced, it's efficiently produced, and the MCs are adequate. Plus, it's worth some historical value as one of Southern rap's first albums, and more specifically, Rap-A-Lot's starting point, as well as the origin of rappers' infatuation with Scarface and hip-hop producers' use of film samples. But Making Trouble is not a distinctive or essential album, and it's guilty of what used to be hip-hop's unforgivable sin: Biden. Ultimately, as far as the Geto Boys were concerned, whatever next album was going to spring out from their next iteration, it wasn't going to be Just Made a Jump in the Hype. But it definitely wasn't going to be Making Trouble Part 2 either. Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you on the next video.